Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of Canon Calls. This week, I will be interviewing Dr. Gordon Wilson about his brand new book, A Different Shade of Green, A Biblical Approach to Environmentalism and the Dominion Mandate. His book is now available for pre-order at canonpress.com, so get it today and make sure to tell all your friends and family. Thanks again for listening to Canon Calls. It would mean a lot to us if you would make sure to subscribe and then rate and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Cheers. Welcome to another episode of Canon Calls. I'm your host, Jake McAtee, and this week we have Gordon Wilson in the booth with us.
Hey, nice to be here, Jake.
Thanks for coming. It's the first week of school, right?
Yes, first week of school at New St. Andrews.
Okay, so first week of New St. Andrews, did you have class today?
I had class yesterday and the day before.
Awesome. What classes are you teaching at New St. Andrews?
This term, I'm teaching marine biology as an elective, and I'm teaching natural history, which is my required biology colloquium for the sophomores.
Okay. And then you do like fun trips with the marine biology one, right?
Yeah. For the electives, I do field trips. Yeah.
Okay.
So in a couple weeks, we're heading off to San Juan Islands, up northwest of Seattle, and spend a couple days there and drive back.
What are you doing there?
We have a saltwater lab at the Friday Harbor Labs, and we collect in the intertidal zone, bring back specimens in buckets alive, and put them in saltwater basins. And it's running cold saltwater in the lab, and so you can, at waist high, you can put all your critters in these basins and then fish them out, put them in a dish. They're alive and happy, and put them under the microscope, look at them in real close up. The students just love it. They'll do descriptions, drawings, really honing their observational skills.
That's awesome. Do you find that your electives are like always full?
Yes, I cap it at 10 just because of the van size. But right. It's usually topped out, and usually some people on the wait list.
That's awesome.
Waiting for somebody to drop and occupy.
I imagine
their vacated spot.
Yeah, with just the nature of New St. Andrews, it's nice to have classes like yours where you can actually go and
get out
and touch stuff. And
I get a lot of feedback from students that have taken. Many of the students are just like, that was the high point at my NSA career. I mean, they loved all their courses, but just getting out and seeing God's creation is something that they love.
I've heard much the same. Okay, so Gordon, you just wrote a book, A Different Shade of Green.
Yep, I did,
and it is on pre-order now. So this will be on Monday. We are it's the week before. So it's still up.
When will it actually?
August 27th is its release.
Okay.
So yeah, you're also in movies.
Well, yeah, a nature documentary.
Yeah,
The Riot and the Dance.
Yeah,
Earth. That's part one, and then Riot and the Dance. Water was coming out.
Is coming.
Yeah.
Do you have any clue?
I don't know. I've heard that they're shooting for this fall.
Okay.
But
nice.
I don't make any.
Sure.
I'm not in charge of that. So
did you think that it was going to be that you would just be the author movie star in your late 40s?
Well, you mean late 50s?
That's what I meant. Of course. Yeah.
No. Back. I'm not sure exactly when I started writing my textbook, but somewhere 2008, I'm guessing.
Okay. Also titled The Riot and the Dance.
The Riot and the Dance. I just wanted to write a textbook that was just enjoyable. I'm not presuming to be a great writer. I just wanted to write a textbook that had a personality behind it and not this insipid data dump. And so I wrote that textbook just following my own pedagogical inclinations of how would I want to be taught biology if I was in their shoes. And so I wrote the book that way.
Is that something that you use?
Yeah, I use it. I think it's, if you spread it out over a year, it's great for high school.
Okay.
And I use it for my college, as I've, over the years, seen college texts and high school texts. The information is essentially the same, especially if it's a non-majors college. It's essentially the same as high school biology. It's just, I think, a matter of pace. So I recommend it for high school as well, for a whole year. Then I do it in a semester.
Okay. No, that was in 2008.
Well, that's when I started. It came out, I think, 2014, 2015. All these dates are sort of nebulous in my head. And even writing this new book called A Different Shade of Green, I'm not sure exactly when I started, maybe 3 years ago. I know that Peter Escalante heard me speak on the topic in grad forum, and after the talk, he came up and said, "You need to write a book." And I said, "Okay."
Nice.
And that was, I don't know if that was his first or second years on faculty. So I may try to pinpoint when he said that.
I was trying to think. I would have been in your grad forums from 2016 on.
Okay.
So I think it probably was his first year, which was.
Were you in that grad forum?
I don't think so.
Where
we had you for a grad forum, which was one of my favorite grad forums, was on the box turtle. But that was the only one I had you for. So I want to say that it was probably 2015.
2015?
Or late 2016.
Or did you ever skip?
I skipped, but I don't think I ever skipped yours. I wouldn't have skipped that one.
All right.
Man, I'm already there. I already have my diploma, so I feel like I can say I skipped.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not sure when I started writing it, but I'd done a presentation on the same topic.
Okay.
And then I just sort of expanded it and amplified it into a book.
Awesome. And your nephew wrote the foreword?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And my nephew, N.D. Wilson.
Yeah. He directed the first Ride and the Dance.
Exactly.
So how did the Ride and the Dance come about? Is it something that you'd always wanted to do? Or, was it a mix of you two?
No. I like to think of it as I'm sort of a Bilbo Baggins in his Hobbit hole. I'm called to teach college, New St. Andrews, and I like doing what I do, but I would not say that I'm not a shaker and mover, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
I like to do what I do, and I like to keep fine tuning it. And then the short story is that an investor asked, because Nate had done a feature film, River Thief. He knew he was getting into that whole industry, and he said, "I'm sick and tired of nature documentaries that are just completely steeped in evolutionary, in the evolutionary worldview,
right? And
I would like a documentary that is Christian and creationist,
right?
So he said, "Would you, if I gave you some money, would you, or loan your invested money, would you do this?" And Nate agreed, and then he lived right next door to me at the time, and he popped over and said,
"Seems convenient.
Would you, Uncle Gordon, would you be the narrator?" And I said, "Sure, I would love to." So I think of Nate as Gandalf.
Okay.
I was happily doing my thing in my hobbit hole, and he came and
rushed you out of it.
Yeah, whisked me out of it. So this is sort of my college teaching is sort of my day job, and then he whisked me off on these adventures
by night
yeah, by day, night, whatever.
Yeah.
And to film this. And it really is something I wanted to do. I've always loved nature documentaries. And of course, I would slog through all of the evolutionary worldview because the cinematography was just getting better and better and better.
Right.
The narration was constantly giving God, God is certainly totally factored out of the equation.
Sure.
It's all the result of time, chance, matter, energy, natural selection, mutation, and look at all of this amazing stuff. And that, in spite of all of the beautiful cinematography, that kind of narration is blasphemy. I mean, and I don't think I'm misusing the word there.
Right.
Because it's when you're looking at God's masterpiece and calling, essentially saying that it could happen unintelligently, that
right.
That's bad. That's really bad. And so we hope to keep the ball rolling so that we can continue to make these types of documentaries. I know Right in the Dance 2, that's sort of the part 2
right.
Of the first one, Earth and Water, but then hopefully we'll specialize and get into different ecosystems or if different groups of animals, who knows, maybe insects or maybe, birds or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
Attenborough's been doing it from his 20s, late 20s to now he's in his 90s.
Wow.
And he's still doing it.
Right.
So I figure, well, if he can...
You got plenty of time.
Got plenty of time.
Awesome. So you ended up doing your, was it your doctoral thesis on the box turtle?
Yeah, eastern box turtle.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, that was another thing. I had a young family and I was teaching at Liberty University and I wanted to pursue a PhD, but I just thought, how in the world, how could this happen? And at the time...
What were you teaching at Liberty?
I was teaching a whole array of biology courses over the years. I mean, not all at once, but over the years, I got to teach a lot of different biology courses.
Awesome.
And my wife knew that I wanted to pursue a PhD, but she just thought it was just not feasible. So she never prayed. But then she one day was convicted that, I need to pray that Gordon would be able to get into a PhD. She started praying. And then at about the same time, my friend, in our book group, he said, you've sort of reached your ceiling of professional development. You need to get a PhD. So he started to push me. And then we had homecoming, and a former student at Liberty came back at homecoming, and I was catching up with him at this soiree. And I said, Tim, what are you doing? He said, I'm working on a PhD at George Mason University under Carl Ernst, who's the Jedi master of turtles in the world.
Love it.
And I was like, wow. And at this time, I was starting to think I need to pursue. I was starting to tap on doors or look at different programs. And I said, I just out of the blue, I just said, would you recommend me to your professor? And he said, sure. So he went back up and recommended me to Ernst. And then he called me back and said, Dr. Ernst wants to talk to you on the phone. So I got on the line with him, and it was a separate call. He wasn't right then.
Right.
And he said, "Yeah, I'd love to interview you. Come up to my office at 6:30 a.m." And his office is like 3 hours and 15 minutes away. So I had to get up at 3 in the morning. And
whoa.
I was there at his office at 6:30, and he started talking to me like I'm his student already. And so that's how I got into the program. And I just thought, wow. And box turtles were my very favorite. It was one of the things that during my early years, 5 or 6 years old, we had box turtles in the woods across the street. in Annapolis. And so box turtles loom large in my nostalgia and my real love of life. And so he said, what do you want to study? And I said, well, box turtles be great. And he pulled off his big tome off of his shelf that he wrote for Smithsonian Press called Turtles of the United States and Canada, and flipped to box turtles. I thought it had been overstudied because it's a common turtle. And he said, no, we need a good reproductive study done on the eastern box turtle. Most of the stuff in my book is anecdotal. And he said, go for it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I get to work under the, one of the top turtle biologists in the world. And I get to study my favorite animal.
Yeah. And talk about a great PhD.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun radio tracking box turtle females and watching them lay eggs. And it was great.
And you got to do all of that. Did you do much traveling for that? Or is
no,
it
was just a study site in Lynchburg. So I only had to drive 10 minutes from my house and do my research. And I did have to drive up to George Mason for classes, but that wasn't.
Right.
They catered to the professional student. So
nice.
Only one day a week.
Awesome. And then
so you probably you've learned, I gave you more than you wanted there. But.
No, well, and then I got to sit in your grad forum on the box turtle. So I've gotten the benefit of all of it. Okay, so you were at Liberty, and then what brought you to New St. Andrews?
I was at Liberty. I loved it, but I was beginning to get fidgety. Wanted to teach. I wanted to teach biology. My pedagogical philosophy was changing. I wanted to teach biology, not just using one textbook, but I wanted to have other texts that to make the course a little bit more alive and more interesting. And not that I couldn't have done it. I just wanted to reinvent how I taught biology.
Sure.
Take what I liked about conventional teaching and add what I wanted. And I felt like a nice new start would be great. And about the time NSA needed a science teacher. Also, my parents were getting older and older, and they needed more and more help. So,
and they were in Moscow.
They were in Moscow, and even though Liberty helped and assisted me in the pursuit of my PhD, I talked to my superiors, dean and chair, and told them all the reasons why I wanted to go out to Moscow, even though I just had a freshly minted PhD.
Yeah.
And they saw all my reasons, and they just said, yeah, this is the right thing. You should. And I was changing theologically, too, becoming reformed. And not that you can't be reformed at Liberty, but
yeah.
So pedagogical reasons, theological reasons. My parents were getting older, and so all those things. And then they needed a science guy, and so all those things converged, and I came out to New St. Andrews in 2003.
Okay.
And that was the same year, that same spring, I graduated with my PhD.
Wow.
My PhD was from 99 to 2003.
Okay. I'm curious to know, when you said you're becoming reformed, what were some theological, what were some of those theological transformations you were making?
Well, at the time, Nate, our lives were pretty intertwined. He came out to Liberty for a year. He was a 1 year at grad school, and he was single, and so he could come over to my house and be a fun big older cousin to my kids, and we had late night talks. And I think for many people, it's the sticking point is soteriology, and so after many good discussions with him late into the night, he pretty much
pushed you.
He ran circles around me theologically.
Okay.
He was always respectful, but I eventually had to say uncle, even though he was my nephew.
Right.
And
he's pretty winsome.
Yeah, he's pretty winsome.
Okay, so then you moved out 2003,
but the theological change was 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And then all of a sudden that Calvinism start getting into everything else spreading. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So 2003 and
Then I've been here for 16 years.
16 years. Okay.
Yeah. It's
And
weird.
always, it is weird.
I'm the old guy at New St. Andrews. I've always thought of myself, going to Liberty. That was in 91. I was 30 years old. I always felt like I was the young faculty member.
Yeah.
And you don't feel yourself necessarily. Well, I do feel myself getting older. But now I'm looking around and going, I'm the old guy,
Yeah.
in faculty meetings,
Love that.
It's weird.
Is it?
It is weird.
Is there advantages to this?
I don't know.
I'm sure there is.
Probably.
I feel like you probably have the only like animals in your office, which is cool.
Well, not my office, my lab.
Your lab?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah, so that's an advantage, I feel like, maybe.
Yeah.
As you went into the documentary stuff, is there anything that's been surprising, things you didn't expect or things maybe I wouldn't expect to out of that experience, whether it's interacting with folks, like I would have never thought that people are getting this out of the documentary, but here they are.
Oh, boy. I think we got responses that were pretty anticipated.
Okay.
A lot of people said, wow, that was just great. And it was, the same reasons I would have expected them to say. It was so great to hear that God was given the glory and the praise for the creation rather than evolution.
Yeah.
But it was, but I think they also were very happy that it wasn't this rinky-dink, hokey, tacky, cheesy, Christian thing. It was, and I was narrating, but all of the art, the good camera work, the good narration, except for my extemp stuff, which is the minority. Most of the narration is voiceover, which was written by Nate.
Okay.
And of course, he's a best-selling author.
Yeah.
You can't really go wrong.
Nope.
And he knows me well, so he was trying to capture my voice.
Yep.
As he wrote, and anything that I needed to sandpaper as far as I need to qualify that statement, like I would make little changes if I needed to.
Okay.
But it's not really high level biology, and so a lot of the narration he could pull out from just simple research on the animal's natural history.
You're also responsible, maybe secondarily, for the camera work.
Yeah, because one of the main, there was mostly 2 cameramen, sometimes 3, for Right in the Dance. But my son Dane Wilson is one of the cameramen, and he does most of the editing. So he's all set up for that in his studio.
Yeah,
he does a great job.
His dark cave.
I am very, very proud of my son.
Yeah, Dane's great. Dane also set up this room before you came. So
that's great.
Dane's he immediately looked up to the part of the ceiling that's falling, which was was good. Okay, so one of the things I think is interesting too about your documentary is you guys are calling. There's a call to action. There's several calls to action that I can tell from Right in the Dance. One of which that I love and that I think you guys get a lot of traction out of, and some pushback is the basically your call that God loves these creatures. God has created them, put time into them, loves them, gave them life, and you ought to love them as well.
Right.
And you're on pretty shaky ground when you say, I hate that thing.
Right. And I can see pushback saying you're on pretty shaky ground if you say, I love that, when much of it was cursed. I do answer those questions in my book. Okay, nice. But yeah, because God said at the end of creation week, it was very good.
Yep.
That meant all of it. Now, of course, that was before the fall.
Right.
And some people, I think in sort of their ad hoc view of the world, they go, this animal that I hate must have been created after the fall. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
You read your Bible.
Right.
It was created before the fall. Yes, it was bent. it was twisted in some way, shape, or form. And so there's a lot of creation that's cursed. All creation groans. It was subjected to futility, it says in Romans. And so we know in our taking dominion, we have to know our charges. The dominion mandate is essentially global wildlife management. It really is. We sometimes expand it, and I think there are other expansive parts of it, but in its core, the core command is the creatures that he made, and that we are to rule over them. That's wildlife management. And we have to know our charges to do it well. And things get out of hand. Since we live in a cursed world, there's many species that are either parasites or predators. We have to be careful. We have to manage things so the predators don't get too abundant, or the prey, there's parasites that can make our animals sick or us sick. We have to deal with them as pests. But, the end game is really redemption. If you read Isaiah 11, the mountain of the Lord, nothing will hurt or harm. We talked about lots of animals, both domestic type animals as well as wild animals. Nothing will hurt or harm in all my holy mountain. And so we see that the eschaton will be a place where even the animals won't have adversarial relationships. Before the fall, all animals ate plants. From a biology perspective, that's hard to wrap your head around, especially when you're just thinking there's so many predators, so many parasites. How can I even envision an ecology that has no death and destruction? Well, that's just a limitation on our imagination. We don't know exactly how it was before the fall, but after the whole creation's redeemed, it's going to be even better. And we need to work towards that end and not just think, oh, I hate this. We need to, blot it out of existence, or inadvertently, because of our bad dominion, our bad management, rub it out of existence. Whether we're trying to kill it or trying to make it go extinct or accidentally making it go extinct, I think that's just bad dominion from the get-go.
And this gets us right into your book. So
yeah, that's a lot of the book. It's a different shade of green. And when I say a different shade of green, it obviously sets up an antithesis between what we normally think of as green.
Right.
All this wild, as it says in the back of the book, unhinged environmentalism, where you've got a lot of extreme environmentalists that view humans as some sort of parasite that's just going to destroy the world. And I think we have a lot of capacity to destroy the world. So I acknowledge that we can do a lot of damage. But often Christians just really don't know how to navigate through this crazy, politically charged and polarized world. You've got the environmentalists, often very left, very liberal. Their social agendas really, if you look at the whole thing, you go, I really do like creation. I really like animals. I like plants. But I cannot hitch my wagon to their secular agenda because it's just going places I can't go. And some people just hate that so much that they react and fall off the other side of the boat. The sort of the Billy Bob reactionary that says, if an enviro kook likes it, then I hate it, or I almost vindictively want to do anything to annoy an environmentalist. And we can't either. And you've got Christians that say, oh, it's cool to be green. And if it's cool to be green, I'm going to just, without any discernment, without any wisdom, I'm just going to drink their Kool-Aid. And they just fall under the whole environmental program that's just ridiculous. But so what I'm trying to do is say, hey, let's not react for or against, because if you drink their Kool-Aid, it's bad news. And if you react against it, you find yourself being antagonistic towards your God's creation.
Right.
The environmentalists don't own it. Okay? God created it. God said it was good. We have to figure out. We have not been leading. We've been abdicating.
Good.
And so that's my book is 3 parts. The first part is biblical reasons for wise dominion.
Okay.
And second part is practical reasons for wise dominion. You know, what have we found out in science? Why is it good to rule over the created world through what we've learned from science and ecology? What have we learned lessons that actually really show that the biblical reasons are good?
Right.
The science has also backed that up. And then the last part is just problems, just dealing with at the principle level, the big problems that we face today in environment. I don't deal with everything. It's just too vast a field, but I try to hit the main hot button issues and give a Christian and informed response. And ultimately, the solution, problems and solutions part, I ultimately end with the gospel.
Okay.
But I don't want to be a spoiler here. So you'll see how I connect the dots.
Awesome. Can I ask you, I'm curious, because you said you started with the biblical, then the practical, and then you move on to,
problems and solutions.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who said, that's plainly unscientific if you're starting with the Bible? Why wouldn't you start with scientific reasons and then move to, how does that work with the Bible?
Well, I want to first start with the scriptures. This is always start with the scriptures, because we interpret. I mean, a lot of this science is empirical stuff, and there's nothing in the Bible that we first need to establish that we are rulers. Okay, a lot of Christians use the word stewardship, and that's I know what they mean, and I think for all intents and purposes, there's a lot of similarity in what I'm trying to get across in the book, stewardship. But the Bible doesn't use the word stewardship. In the dominion mandate, Genesis 1:28, it's just dominion, which is rule, sovereign, kingly rule. Stewardship implies that we are charged to take care of that which is not ours, and the language is much more. I mean, yeah, ultimately it's God's. God. The language is much more like God signed the title over to us.
Right, delegated
that
to you.
It's like it's like your great rich uncle gives you a Ferrari, and it's yours. I mean, he gave you the keys, gave you everything. Now you can roll it in the ditch. You can, speed on the highway, get tickets. But it's not like we're just borrowing the car. Right. The creation and the analogy here is the car. God gave it to us. We can own it badly, or we can own it wisely. But stewardship sort of implies that it's sort of on loan.
Okay,
and we're taking care of it for our uncle. Rather than he's given it to us. Dominion is the word used, not stewardship. Although there's going to be a lot of similarities. Good stewards will do the same types of things as good dominion.
No, it's really good. And I was talking to James about this earlier, that one thing I'm really excited about your book is that we, especially in these parts, do a lot to talk about the cultural mandate, the dominion mandate, and there's a lot of your school at New St. Andrews, there's a lot of talk about just rebuilding the ruins of of all of this cultural mess. And I just automatically assume I'm never thinking in terms of what your book's about.
Right. And so part of that cultural, we want to take over in a godly sort of way. whether it's municipalities, and, just have the gospel so we transform culture. But that means we transform every aspect of human activity, which means we really need, as the gospel pervades and the yeast in the loaf thing, it needs to transform.
It gets outside too.
It gets out to how we manage, right now we can't just storm the Bastille and say, okay, Fish and Wildlife Service, we're in charge. We can't just do a revolution.
Right.
We have to, it's reformation. We have to have Christians start to occupy these positions. But as they occupy these positions, it shouldn't be this mentality of, oh, we'll just always do it forever and ever the way they do it. We need to shape it and culturally transform the practices, take what's been good that's been given to the seculars by common grace, but also rethinking, every aspect should be rethought, like private property rights. Really, it really boils down to love your neighbor, love God and love your neighbor. And that should apply to how we treat the creation.
100%. I think one thing that, about halfway through your book, one thing that I think is really helpful too, when I look out at the world, you see a lot of like alarm bell ringing in terms of the climate.
Alarmists.
Yeah. And it's very, anxiety is very high.
Right.
And generally the people who are in that camp are not emotionally healthy. And it almost seems like, getting to the point of what I'm excited about your book is like to contrast that. There was like the big Jordan Peterson thing came out, and his big thing was make your bed. He wanted to like charge you to take care of what's in your own room. You can't get any more like, responsible than your own room.
Yeah.
And like a ton of people, a lot of men have found that to be actually a challenge and actually something they can achieve. And like looking at the two differences of when I look out at the alarmist and alarm bell culture, there's actually nothing that any one of them can do that morning that can alleviate any of the emotional anxiety and anything like that. It's ultimately the most unkind thing I can think of. But what I'm getting from your book is that, faithful Christians doing what's in their own sphere,
exactly,
bringing these biblical principles to work in that sphere, is going to go a long way. And like you said, with the reformational aspect. Yeah.
And I realized when I was writing this book, I can't, it's not a methods book, how to do habitat restoration. I give some ideas, but I'm not the expert. I'm a biology prof, at a small Christian liberal arts classical college. And there are so many people that have a huge skill set in a lot of environmental type occupations that I don't have. But often they're a workaday scientists or workaday people that are just operating under the assumptions, their marching orders. They don't always think about how the Bible applies. And so I'm not saying I know how to do it. I'm thinking many of these people have a sphere. It might be small, like how to, they may just own a cat or a dog or a pet snake.
Right.
And their sphere is very small in terms of creatures. Some people have a bigger sphere. And I just, and skills to match it. But I want every Christian that has some sort of impact on God's creation that's outside of humans, whether it's, gardening, their own garden, their backyard, to an arboretum, to a botanical garden, and on up to national parks and huge wilderness areas. With the bigger sphere, bigger responsibility. But I want them to think biblically as they are executing their responsibilities. Yeah. And insofar as they can, without being a revolutionary and
storming places.
to be working in these biblical principles. And the gospel ultimately is the solution. I don't like the top-down command and control. It's all about legislation.
Right.
I want it to be grassroots, the gospel-motivated transformation of culture at all the different levels, whether it's the arts, or environmental. I almost said stewardship. Dominionship.
Yeah.
If that's a word.
Kingship.
Kingship. Just have it pervade everything. And so there's not somebody nagging you to do this. It's motivated from a heart, a change of heart.
One thing that, as I'm one of the people on the Ride and the Dance Facebook page, and one of the things I've been encouraged about is just the level of, after seeing the documentary, is just how many families are now out and about in their own wherever.
Yeah.
And it's been great to see, just like, I think there's a level at which I would have thought like, it's out there though. I don't live in a place where I could just go do those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems, that's just been to my ignorance. Outside is just right out the...
Yeah, it's right out there. And that's sort of what I want. That's why the Ride and the Dance and the book go hand in hand, because I'm wanting to get the younger generation Christians to just go ape, and be yard apes, as they say. Just get out there with their buckets and explore insects. Moms have to learn how to accommodate that, especially if they've got their house beautiful standards, and just learn how to let the kids really follow their instincts of, we have to be careful. There's some poisonous things out there and you got to know them, but just to encourage that, because once that is encouraged, then the kids will have just the concrete hasn't dried with them,
right. Right.
And they will grow up loving the diversity that God has made and learning it. I mean, the kids can learn diversity amazingly well with field guides, and sometimes they can absorb it way faster than adults.
It does seem, too, to have a sort of, it demands a sort of childlike patience as well, that I think,
Mm-hmm.
like, when I think of myself or, adults in general, that they just don't have.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying that the concrete hasn't dried with them. How would you encourage parents to, like, keep that sort of patience going?
Yeah, my mom wasn't really keen on snakes, but she didn't want to squelch it, you know. And she, you got to follow house rules, Can't just go letting snakes go in your house and tracking mud through, because you kids need to honor their parents in certain house rules. But what I would encourage parents to do, if they're not real keen on being, just to encourage that instinct. I think a lot of kids, they're not all going to become biologists, but a lot of kids have that instinct to catch critters and frogs and snakes and bugs, and to foster that appreciation. Right. And not just foster it by tolerating it, but by, if they're really into it, getting them field guides, regional field guides that are appropriate for that geography.
And geography, okay.
Yeah, and and some kids are more interested in, not too many, most kids are interested in animals, but if they're that rare individual that likes the plants more, flower, wildflower guides, tree guides, there's just all guides for everything. And that allows them to dig deeper, that the parents don't have to be teaching them.
Sure.
Kids just, I've had some kids come to me, they're visiting town because their older brother or sister is going to NSA, and they're telling me all the things they're catching in Louisiana. I'm like, I wish I was in Louisiana.
Right.
Going ditching with them. Ditching is, going to these canals that are out behind backyards where there's lots of bayous down there, and catching critters. And They call it ditching.
Have you been there? Have you
No,
done it?
I haven't gone ditching. I'd love to go
I
ditching.
haven't gone ditching.
I haven't gone ditching. I'd love to go ditching with a bunch of young kids in Louisiana.
Okay, so if we have any Louisiana people that are eager to fly out Dr. Gordon Wilson, he is open to it.
You bet.
I think that's really big, and I think just the assuming the center on Dominion that God's given us this place. Now, like, go have a good time with it. Thinking for myself growing up, that was just not a thing.
Right.
And it was
sometimes hard to find habitat in Fort Worth.
That's right. Well, it's so funny.
No, where were you? You were in Fort Worth.
It was north of Fort Worth. But what's funny is I was going to bring up when we went to Fort Worth, we were driving around some parking lot, and you said, what is the general habitat of this place? What kind of wild animals are around? And I was just like, man, the mosquitoes here are, a bummer. Let me think about it.
And I know there's rattlesnakes out when you go out in the tulies.
Right. But I think I just told you the Fort Worth Zoo is insane. You should go. But other than that, I have no clue. I don't know what's. And I was just like, man, but I should. There's no reason I shouldn't. But yeah, I remember that, and it's it's just something that I would be eager to pass on in terms of something I just never got. So I'm having to catch up in ways.
Right. Great.
In fact, and then I think I changed the subject to the idea that. Oh man, what was the college that we started talking about that has the Horned Frogs? Oh, TCU, Texas Christian University, the Horned Frogs.
Okay.
And you said,
are they the Horned Toads?
It's the Horned Frogs.
Horned Frogs.
I think you asked that in the car, and then when
even their common name is Horned Toads, and they're not toads, they're lizards, but
right.
The common name is often horny toads.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and you said you did say at the end of it, that excites me. They're now my favorite college team. So I hope you're keeping up.
Well,
this year,
no, I totally forgot I said that. It bugs me that they're called horned frogs, though.
Does it bug you? It should be horned toads.
Well, I mean, both are frogs, but normally I hear the word. Maybe certain sectors of the country call them horned frogs, but their scientific name, they are lizards, but they do have squatty bodies that have sort of a toad-like appearance. So their scientific name is toad body.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that in Latin or Greek, I forget it's Latin or Greek parts, it's rhinosoma, and that means toad body. But I'll forgive them for calling them horned frogs. Are you sure they're called horned frogs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go frogs. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just totally out of the
No, I thought that we did this, and then you were excited about the fact that it was like a particular horned frog and not another one. Anyway.
Okay.
Neither of us really remember the conversation that well.
Do they have them on their football helmets?
Yeah.
The actual lizard?
I think so. Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
So
maybe when you're down there, you can get me
I'll get you a shirt.
Or
a helmet.
No, shirts probably. Yeah.
Okay.
The helmets are probably pretty spendy.
Or the jerseys. I can see what I can do. Yeah,
but the jerseys, would they have the
They should, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gordon Wilson, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you, Jake.
Go get his book, pre-order A Different Shade of Green, and it releases August 27th. Thanks so much.
Thank you.